Dear Esther, I sometimes feel as if I've given birth to this island. Somewhere between the longitude and latitude, a split opened up, and it beached remotely here. No matter how hard I correlate, it remains a singularity, an alpha point in my life that refuses all hypothesis. I return each time leaving fresh markers that I hope, in the full glare of my hopelessness, will have blossomed into fresh insight in the interim. When you were born, your mother told me, a hush fell over the delivery room. A great red birthmark covered the left side of your face. No one knew what to say, so you cried to fill the vacuum. I always admired you for that you cried to fill whatever vacuum you found. I began to manufacture vacuums just to enable you to deploy your talent. The birthmark faded by the time you were 6 and had gone completely by the time we met, but your fascination with the empty and its cure remained. found the ship's manifest, crumpled and waterlogged under a stash of paint cans. It tells me that along with this present cargo, there was a large quantity of antacid yogurt bound for the European market. It must have washed out to sea. God knows there are no longer gulls or goats here to eat it. A wonderful sight. The moon cresting the junction between the cliff path and the stone circle. It cast a shadow of the ridge across the beach, all the world as if you had signed your name in untidy handwriting. When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boats, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this. To keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh. They were God-fearing people, those shepherds. There was no love in the relationship. Donnelly tells me that they had one Bible that was passed around in strict rotation. It was stolen by a visiting monk in 1776, 2 years before the island was abandoned altogether. In the interim, I wonder, did they assign chapter and verse to the stones and grasses? marking the geography with a superimposed significance that they could actually walk the Bible and inhabit its contradictions. Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life. I threw my arms wide and the cliff opened out before me, making this rough home. I transferred my belongings from the bothy on the mount and tried to live here instead. It was cold at night and the sea lapped at the entrance at high tide. To climb the peak, I must first venture even deeper into the veins of the island, where the signals are blocked altogether. Only then will I understand them, when I stand on the summit and they flow into me, uncorrupted.
Ja, hallo? Ihr beiden. Das Game scheint irgendwie nur in Englisch zu sein. Das ist ein bisschen schwierig, dem Ganzen zu folgen. Ja, nee, ich bin krankgeschrieben, deswegen geht das heute mal. Muss man doch mal wahrnehmen, dass man zu Hause ist, eine Ruhe hat. Kann man auch mal in aller Ruhe einen Stream machen. Ja, viel Spaß. Aber heute ist doch schon Freitag. Kann ja nicht mehr schlimm werden, ne? So, frage ich hier nicht wohin jetzt. Jetzt lang. Was jetzt? Bin ich jetzt tot? Schwimmen kann er nicht, oder? Ah, sieht er ja noch gar nicht. Also mit dieser Zeitverzögerung im Stream, das ist ja irgendwie ein bisschen nervig. Ja, also schwimmen kann er nicht. Ich will das jetzt so gleich sehen. Auch eine Trophäe erhalten, das ist auch schön. Schwimmen kann er also nicht. Ah, gut. Ja, was halte ich von dem Spiel? Hab gerade erst angefangen, vor, keine Ahnung, ein paar Minuten. Schade finde ich, dass es anscheinend nicht in Deutsch ist. Kann das auch Ton? Na, mal gucken, vielleicht hat er jetzt wenigstens englische Untertitel. Mal schauen. Wie gesagt, nur in Englisch ist ein bisschen schwierig zu folgen. Da steht zwar ein bisschen was, aber irgendwie doch nicht genug. Ah, hier scheint es weiter zu gehen. Wo bin ich da hergekommen? Wo bin ich hergekommen?
The vegetation here has fossilized from the roots up.
Was Deutsches. Ich sehe was Deutsches.
To think they once grazed animals here, the remnants of occupation being evidence to that.
Oh, du musst
It is all
lesen,
sick to death. The water is too polluted for the fish, the sky is too thin for the birds, and the soil is cut with the bones of hermits and shepherds. I've heard it said that human ashes make great fertilizer, that we could sow a forest from all that is left of your hips and ribcage, with enough left over to thicken the air and repopulate the bay.
Das habe ich nicht gelesen, scheiße. Also ich weiß auch gar nicht so richtig in dem Spiel jetzt, worum es überhaupt geht, was man machen muss. Ich habe jetzt einfach mal angefangen, ohne da vorher was rüber zu lesen. Ja, ich laufe jetzt hier einfach mal so rum und gucke, was passiert oder was nicht passiert. Laufen kann er, glaube ich, auch nicht. Das ist ein bisschen schade. Ich habe zumindest noch nicht rausgefunden. Kann nur hier zoomen. Das kann er, aber kann er irgendwie laufen nicht. Na, wenn ich... das wollte ich gar nicht. Scheiße.
Come back.
Komm zurück, ja. Naja. Oh, schon wieder eine Trophäe. Ich muss nur sterben, dann kriegt man Trophäen, oder was? Klippe runterstürzen, im Wasser ertränken, okay. Dann gibt's Trophäen, auch nicht schlecht. Ja, aber jetzt mal gucken. Du warst jetzt nicht, wie ich hierher gekommen, ich weiß es nicht. Ich latsche einfach mal weiter. Wird aber dunkel hier. Ah, es lädt. Oh, noch eine Trophäe, das ist ja geil.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my ordnance survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the welcome brake services. But although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore. All night the boy has kept me lucid. I sat when I was at the very edge of despair, when I thought I would never unlock the secret of the island. I sat at the edge and I watched the idiot boy blink through the night. He's mute and he is retarded, and he has no thought in his metal head but to blink each wave and each minute aside until the morning comes and renders him blind as well as deaf-mute. In many ways, we have much in common.
Ja, finde ich auch. Also das gefällt mir an sich auch eigentlich ganz gut, aber ja. Du hast jetzt wie gesagt, wahrscheinlich muss man einfach nur durch die Gegend rennen und dann erfährt man da die Geschichte halt. Ich glaube nicht, dass man da jetzt irgendwas suchen direkt oder finden kann oder aufnehmen kann. Ich glaube, es geht ja nur rein um die Geschichte. Aber Trophäen für Sterben gibt es. Das ist schon wieder lustig. Das finde ich gut. Wie jetzt? Hier geht's auch nicht. Na doch, komm, geh weiter. Wie? Oh Menno. Hier geht's nicht weiter. Oder? Okay, will er nicht. Na toll. Komm, geh doch. Oh. Dass der auch nicht laufen kann. Das nervt mich ein bisschen. Ich habe es auch noch nicht rausgefunden, aber jetzt alle Tasten gedrückt. Geht irgendwie nicht. So, ja, da oben geht's auch nicht weiter. Hm.
I had kidney stones and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk. begun to climb, away from the sea and towards the center. It is a straight line to the summit, where the evening begins to coil around the aerial and squeeze the signals into early silence. The bothy squats against the mount to avoid the gaze of the aerial. I too will creep under the island like an animal and approach it from the northern shore. The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called Jakobsen, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either.
Hier sind überall ab und zu mal solche Malereien. Was das zu bedeuten hat. Ist ja irgendwie nicht zu erkennen, was das sein soll. Sehr mysteriös.
Inventory. A trestle table we spread wallpaper on in our first home. A folding chair. I laughed at you for bringing camping in the lakes. I was uncomfortable later and you laughed then. This diary, the bed with the broken springs. Once asleep you have to remember not to dream. A change of clothes. Donnelly's book, stolen from Edinburgh Library on the way here. I will burn them all on the last morning and make an aerial of my own. In a footnote, the editor comments that at this point, Donnelly was going insane as syphilis tore through his system like a drunk driver. He's not to be trusted. Many of his claims are unsubstantiated, and although he does paint a colourful picture, much of what he says may have been derived directly from his fever. But I've been here, and I know, as Donnelly did, that this place is always half imagined. Even the rocks and caves will shimmer and blur with the right eyes. They found Jakobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. His fingernails were raw and bitten to the quick. They found the phosphorescent moss that grows in the caves deep under the nails. Whatever he'd been doing under the island when his strength began to fail is lost. He'd struggled halfway up the cliff again, perhaps in a delirium, perhaps trying to reach the Bothy's fire before curling into a stone and expiring. Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the Bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent. Did Jakobsen crawl this far? Can I identify the scratches his nails ruined into the rocks? Am I following him cell for cell, inch for inch? Why did he turn back on himself and not carry through to the ascent?
Ist ja gar nicht tief. Oh, das sah so tief aus. Ah, ja. Gehe ich weiter oder gehe ich nicht auf? Ach los, ich bin nicht. Aha, die genug. Komm jetzt hier raus. Aber es hat schon was hier oben. Haben wir schon schön gemacht. Auch mit der Musik und so. Sieht echt cool aus.
In my final dream, I sat at peace with Jakobsen and watched the moon over the Sandford Junction. Goats grazed on the hard shoulder, a world gone to weed and redemption. He showed me his fever scars, and I mine, between each shoulder the nascency of flight. This cannot be the shaft they threw the goats into. It cannot be the landfill where the parts of your life that would not burn ended up. It cannot be the chimney that delivered you to the skies. It cannot be the place where you rained back down again to fertilize the soil and make small flowers in the rocks.
Okay. Ist ja abgefahren. Das ist ja abgefahren. Was hat denn der für Drogen eingeworfen?
I sat here and watched two jets carve parallel white lines into the sky. They charted their course, and I followed them for 21 minutes until they turned off near Sanford and were lost. If I were a gull, I would abandon my nest and join them. I would starve my brain of oxygen and suffer delusions of transcendence. I would tear the bottom from my boat and sail across the motorways until I reached this island once again. We shall begin to assemble our own version of the North Shore. We will scrawl in dead languages and electrical diagrams and hide them away for future theologians to muse and mumble over. We will send a letter to Esther Donnelly and demand her answer. We will mix the paint with ashes and tarmac and the glow from our infections. We will paint a moon over the Sanford Junction and blue lights falling like stars along the hard shoulder. There were chemical diagrams on the mug he gave me coffee in, sticky at the handle where his hands shook. He worked for a pharmaceutical company with an office based on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. He'd been travelling back from a sales conference in Exeter, forming a strategic vision for the peddling of antacid yogurt to the European market. You could trace the connections with your finger, join the dots, and whole new compounds would be summoned into activity.
Ah, cool.
From here, I can see my armada. I collected all the letters I'd ever meant to send to you, if I'd have ever made it to the mainland, but had instead collected at the bottom of my rucksack, and I spread them out along the lost beach. Then I took each and every one, and I folded them into boats. I folded you into the creases, and then, as the sun was setting, I set the fleet to sail. Shattered into 21 pieces, I consigned you to the Atlantic, and I sat here until I'd watched all of you sink.
Also es hat schon was, durchaus. Die Atmosphäre ist wirklich genial. Weil in den Höhlen, das war ja wohl klasse. Und wohl mit dem Mond hier. Also es hat was. Aber es ist wieder eines der Spiele, was für viele zu langweilig ist. Ein sogenannter Walking-Simulator, ne? Aber ich finde es klasse. Ich mag sowas. Muss nicht immer stupides Rumgeballere sein. Ja, genau, so sieht's aus. Du hast es erkannt. Genau so ist es. Ja, wo soll ich jetzt hin? Links besser? Ah, mal gucken, was passiert. Ja, okay.
Come back.
Komm zurück, ja, so. Wo bin ich jetzt? Hier schon? Nee, hier war ich, ne? Genau, da hinten bin ich ins Wasser gegangen. Gut. Achso, jetzt gut latschen. Moment, da geht's noch. Soll nicht nach oben. Ach, dann geht's hier hoch. Komm hin. Ah, hier geht's nach oben.
When Paul keeled over dead on the road to Damascus, they resuscitated him by hitting him in the chest with stones gathered by the roadside. He was lifeless for 21 minutes, certainly long enough for the oxygen levels in his brain to have decreased and caused hallucinations and delusions of transcendence. I'm running out of painkillers, and the moon has become almost unbearably bright. I've begun my voyage in a paper boat without a bottom. I will fly to the moon in it. I've been folded along a crease in time, a weakness in the sheet of life. Now you've settled on the opposite side of the paper to me. I can see your traces in the ink that soaks through the fiber, the pulped vegetation. When we become waterlogged and the cage disintegrates, we will intermingle. When this paper aeroplane leaves the cliff edge and carves parallel vapor trails in the dark, we will come together. If only Donnelly had experienced this, he would have realized he was his own shoreline, as am I. Just as I am becoming this island, so he became his syphilis, retreating into the burning synapses, the stones, the infection. The stones in my stomach will weigh me down and ensure my descent is true and straight. I will break through the fog of these godforsaken pills and achieve clarity. All my functions are clogged, all my veins are choked. If my leg doesn't rot off before I reach the summit, it will be a miracle. There are 21 connections in the circuit diagram of the anti-lock brakes. There are 21 species of gull inhabiting these islands. It is 21 miles between the Sanford Junction and the turn-off for home. All these things cannot, will not be a coincidence. He was not drunk, Esther. He was not drunk at all. He had not drunk with Donnelly or spat Jakobsen back at the sea. He had not careered across the lost shores and terminal beaches of this nascent archipelago. He did not intend his bonnet to be crumpled like a spent tissue by the impact. His windscreen was not star-studded all over like a map of the heavens. His paintwork etched with circuit diagrams, strange fish to call the gulls away. The phosphorescence of the skid marks lighting the M5 all the way from Exeter to Damascus. I am the Ariel. In my passing, I will send news to each and every star. Dear Esther, I have burnt my belongings, my books, this death certificate. Mine will be written all across this island. Who was Jakobsen? Who remembers him? Donnelly has written of him, but who was Donnelly? Who remembers him? I have painted, carved, hewn, scored into this space all that I could draw from him. There will be another to these shores to remember me. I will rise from the ocean like an island without bottom, come together like a stone, become an Ariel, a beacon, that they will not forget you. We have always been drawn here. One day the gulls will return and nest in our bones and our history. I will look to my left and see Esther Donnelly flying beside me. I will look to my right and see Paul Jakobsen flying beside me. They will leave white lines carved into the air to reach the mainland, where help will be sent.
Ui. Jo. Schön. Schön, aber kurz. Ja, Michael, wenn du zugeguckt hast, hast du das Spiel gesehen. Ja, aber ich glaube, wenn du da andere Wege gehst, soll man, glaube ich, ein anderes Erlebnis haben. Also soll angeblich. Ich weiß ja nicht, ob man da andere Wege gehen kann, aber das heißt schon, ich hätte vorhin, man hätte ja wahrscheinlich, wenn du ein paar Mal woanders abbiegst, dass du halt was anderes siehst. Das würde mich ja schon nochmal interessieren, ob das denn so ist, ob man was anderes sieht, eine andere Erzählung mitkriegt. Das würde mich schon interessieren. Ja, kannst du ja überlegen. Kannst du mir ja mal berichten, falls du dir das doch kaufst und wenn du da woanders lang gehst, teilweise, ob du da was anderes siehst oder liest. Aber ansonsten, ja, schön, aber doch sehr, sehr kurz. Ich weiß gar nicht, wann ich angefangen habe. So lange ist das nicht hier. Ach, ich muss noch mal auf die Uhrzeit achten. Ja, das war's. Naja, ist auch gut. Dann kann ich mir noch in Ruhe was zu essen machen. Dann werde ich noch der Bunker, oder The Bunker, werde ich nachher vielleicht auch noch streamen. Da bin ich auch mal gespannt drauf. Das soll ja mit echten Schauspielern irgendwie, wie ein Film. Ich weiß gar nicht, wie das ablaufen soll. Das interessiert mich auch mal. Ja, scheiß Arbeit, ne? Na gut, dann wünsche ich euch, falls noch wer anders zuschaut, noch viel Spaß oder was auch immer. Vielleicht hört man sich ja mal wieder. Dann macht es gut. Ja, okay. Ich sagte mal Tschüss. Ciao, ciao.